I think what we'd like to do is start maybe in your earliest memories of being a kid in Prairie Grove, what downtown was like, what you did, I guess before the Beverly appeared. Jack, what do you remember about downtown?
Before the Beverly, I think the Beverly was probably,
That was a lot later, wasn't it?
well, not a whole lot later. That was probably the uppermost thing in my mind. Every kid in town wanted to work at the Beverly Theater. And Don and Barry had taken it over after James Fay had established it. And then James Fay went on to Hollywood for bigger and better things. Was the originator of the old radio show, The Quiz Kids, for which he got a lot of recognition.
Yeah, that was in Chicago.
But Chicago, okay. Correct me if I say anything else wrong.
Okay, I'll be sure to do that.
Anyway, Don and Barry were still in high school when they took this old theater over in the late 30s, 37, 38 probably. And as I said before, every kid in town just wanted to work down there so bad, and they didn't pay us anything. We deliver sales bills 3 or 4 times a week all over town after school. We sell tickets and take up tickets. We usher. We would sweep out the old theater, and all for a chance to go to the movie that night.
Free.
Free.
How much did they charge?
10 cents is what it
I
cost
think it was about 10 cents.
to go.
I told him a while ago that the first movie we ever had here, I think that they charged a quarter for, was Gone with the Wind, and that was about 1938, I believe. And all of the volunteer employees down there had to come up with a quarter to see Gone with the Wind, because they had inspectors there from the film company counting how many went to the show and how many tickets were sold. And we almost rebelled. It was kind of like going on strike. Everybody was so upset, but we lived through it and went on to have many more happy times at the old Beverly Theater.
You remember Rankin?
Rankin Morrell.
Oh, yes.
Rankin Morrell lived out at Walnut Grove, and he was, if there was ever an introverted kid, he was the epitome of an introvert. Poor thing, he had a kind of little old whiny voice, and Barry could imitate him better than anybody I've ever seen. But they kind of took him under their wing, and well, the rest of us were getting ready to go to service. Some of us had already gone, and Rankin was about the only kid left. So Don and Barry kind of latched on to him and taught him how to run a projection machine. And he worked for several years for him, I guess, while the rest of us were all fighting the war. But it was a fun place to live.
You forgot to mention Arthur McCormick.
Well, Arthur McCormick, Don and Barry's uncle, had a Texaco service station next door to the Beverly Theater. And Don and Barry started trying to upgrade the theater a little bit. It was just an old storefront, that's all it was. And Arthur McCormick's service station bought oil in 5-gallon cans, big cans like this, about that tall, about that big around. And he started selling those oil cans, and they built a marquee out over the theater, and took a can opener and cut the tops and the bottoms out of these old oil cans, and straightened them out, flattened them out, and that's what they covered the marquee with. And it looked pretty damn good by the time they got through with it.
Arthur owned the building too.
Yeah, Arthur owned the building.
I remember the theater before that, when it was on the north side of the street.
The old
Remember
Opera
that?
House.
That was,
The old Opera House.
no, it was
It was over in Rattlers.
Rattlers.
Right.
They rented the front part of that, as I recall. And I remember going there, hot summer day, very, very hot summer day, probably on Saturday afternoon. And right in front of the screen was the number 3 wash tub with ice, with a fan behind the wash tub. My first experience with air conditioning, I guess. I've written a little thing on the Dover Theater with Donald's help, and no one has seen it yet except the second cousin. And he gave me some very, it was 10 cents, except they had specials, a nickel, and they had cereals, you know, and Donna used to go down and pick up the film down at Mr. Lark at the railroad station, you know, so he could get a preview of it, you know. And they had a projectionist when the theater was on the north side of the street there in the Raffles store. Buckeye didn't like to close up his business, and every time the door had come open, no one could see the screen much, so that presented a little problem, but not as big as the projectionist, because he liked to tip the bottle a little bit, and they had a ladder from the alleyway up to the second floor where the projectionist had to climb in. They had a little problem with him every now and then because the sound and the audio and the video were separate, and you had to sync those. So Donald was telling me, and this got to be a problem after a few little drinks.
Y'all remember anything about the jail back there?
They built the jail behind the Southern Mercantile in the old wagon yard.
WPA built it, I think.
WPA built it. It wasn't a concrete block. It was a stone building of some kind.
It's concrete.
Concrete building.
Poured
All
concrete.
concrete.
Had two cells, one on either side. And
And they were reserved for Love Slaughter and Jim Cabot.
that's right.
I remember.
Jim Slaughter and Jim Cabot used to fight at least twice a week.
Throw them in the jail.
I'm
Take
sorry,
them out
Mary
of it
Ann.
on Sunday morning.
Mary Ann, it wasn't Jim Cabot, it was John Schaffner and Love Slaughter that fought every day out behind the old sturdy drugstore. Every
Well,
Saturday.
it could have been John. I really don't, I just remember Love and Jim. I don't remember John.
Well, I remember one
Remember
time,
John?
Love got drunk and got thrown in jail, and they had an old thick mattress of some kind in there, and Love set it on fire,
Yeah.
and everybody gathered around down there. Poor old Love was hanging out from the bar, trying to get his breath, and everybody standing around
Smoke
watching.
coming out of his mouth.
Red, what was his name, came to town every Saturday?
Red Hale?
Red Hale.
Oh, yeah.
Caused
Skylight
trouble.
Mountain.
Red Hale was the kingpin bootlegger down in
Yeah. Everybody moved when he came to town.
Back in, when did Prohibition go out?
32, wasn't it? Uh-huh.
Well, before that, man, every Saturday, the back alley was just full of drunks. Drinking moonshine. And I remember McGill Rollins. And,
They talk about people.
Yeah.
George Cox, Leighton McCoy's brother-in-law, had a fight down there behind the Sterling, and I stood down on the back of the Southern and watched them. One of them had knocked the other one down, and he'd get up and knock the other one down, and man, they had a heck of a fight.
Remember when they raided the still out there at Illinois Chapel? Who ran that? McConnell?
Yeah.
Yeah, McConnell made it awfully good.
He did.
How do y'all know?
So I was told.
They're going back further than I can remember.
They're so much older than you are, Francis.
I know.
Just more than me.
That's right. So I keep telling them, they've already told it all.
Well, you can make up something.
Well, I'm sitting here trying to. It's bigger than what they're telling.
What do y'all remember about the train depot?
What?
The
Train depot. And I remember that Walter Lark was the agent, station agent. And not only do we have a train depot, we have had a livestock pen there and shipped out cattle every Saturday to St. Louis.
And I can remember,
And with Mr. Johnson, Abbott, and G.W.'s father.
He was the foreman.
Section foreman.
Yeah.
He was the one that kept the tracks up in shape. And You know, it's about the livestock pen. Some of you may not remember or know that we, at one time, we had a cotton gin here.
Right there by it.
Cotton gin and a vinegar plant. I keep one with a cheese factory
In Prairie Grove?
in Prairie Grove. We had two canning factories. I had one canning factory, two flour and feed mills.
Canning plant? Canning plant?
Yeah, that's a canning factory now.
Canning plant.
That was, I saw a brochure on that one time. I think the railroad went in 1905, and this canning factory was built right soon after that. For $16,000, I remember they had it down. They had a big lot sale, selling lots $50 a piece, all over town.
I remember I had a good job in the canning factory one year, about 1936, making about 10 cents an hour, working good money. And Mr. Ed Rogers, who was managing the factory in that year, came around and fired me. And he didn't fire me in that sense of the word. He let me go because Congress, as he explained to me, just passed a new law known as the child labor law. And you had to be 16 years old to work in anything that had to do with interstate commerce. And I was only 14. No, I was younger than that. I was 12, I guess.
I thought we were eating too many tomatoes.
And that may have been part of it. But
I can remember the way, if you were downtown or anywhere, well, of course after we moved up here on Knox Street, you could smell the tomatoes from the canning factories, and like to me, when they were canning, the aroma of those hot tomatoes where they scalded them, and I can recall that very well.
They didn't have environmental regulations or laws at that time, and I can remember the little canning factories would dispose of their rotten tomatoes and the water and the juice and everything just in a ditch out behind the old factory. And they'd stay out there in that ditch until they just got so rank you couldn't stand it. And I remember one time some of the rowdies in town, I don't remember exactly who it was, Calvin may have been involved. I know Gordon Phillips was. Gordon was the only kid in town that had a car when he was in high school. And we were out running around and raising hell one night. And we decided we'd go down there and run through that old ditch where all those rotten tomatoes were in Gordon's convertible with the top down. We had rotten tomatoes and rotten juice all over us by the time we got through. Terrible. Seemed like fun at the time.
I remember on Sunday, my dad would let me drive his 33 Plymouth to Sunday school, but after Sunday school, I get a load of kids. Remember the thrill down by the railroad track?
yeah.
You could almost throw a kid out of the back end of that car going over there.
They call those thank you ma'ams.
One time, our grandfather let Grady and me have 3 acres of land up here behind J.P. Harris's to grow tomatoes. And we had 3 acres, and we contracted with the county company for $13 a ton for tomatoes. And your father, Mary, had an old pickup truck. I guess you remember it. But he was the one who would haul it, Grady out of Pippin, and he'd come along and haul it for us over to the county factory. But $13 a ton was pretty good money. We talk about 10 cents an hour, I mean 2 cents for theater ticket and so forth, which doesn't sound like much, but yet that was a 1 hour wage.
Yeah.
For a grown man, 10 cents an hour. And you compare that today, you get to the theater for a whole lot less than that.
You need to tell them their rent in Batesville. Paul tells me what they pay for rent.
Talk about the railroad. I guess I went into service in September of '42, but the month before that, or I was working at Fairgrove Lumber Company, and I guess Benji and Mason and I unloaded the last car that came in over here on the railroad. It was Chat. We shoveled it all on the truck, and shoveled it all off the truck, carload of it, and then they took the railroad out in early 1943. But, well, just before that, well, I was married at the time, and I was working for $15 a week. We had a furnished apartment for $10 a month.
Oh, my.
Unbelievable.
It is. Well, when our daughter rented a part of the duplex she owns for $750 a month recently, I said, Kathy, I no longer feel guilty about renting a house for $60 a month. You know, I really felt like I was robbing someone at the time.
Well, of course, back then too, the doctor, like Dr. Baggett and all of them, $3 a call.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't have it, didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Do it anyway.
Before World War II, do y'all remember what kinds of businesses were downtown?
What's that?
What type of
About
business?
6 grocery stores. There was 3 or 4.
There's one called Wacky somebody.
Wacky Wilverton and the Sterling Garage, is that who you're talking about?
No, I'm thinking of that, it was on down on Mott Street. That's where Russell Cage is now.
It was what?
Paul Jones, Hometown Grocery.
Hometown Grocery.
That was ours.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it belonged to somebody.
No, Valon's took it.
Well, we sold it to them back during the war.
I used to go on deliveries, back when my grandfather and my dad was in the Banner Grocery and Hardware Company they were the theater.
I barely remember the Banner delivering with a budget. Delivering groceries in a budget.
Little cart. Clifford Carl made the deliveries, and I used to go with him. And
Horse and buggy, right?
not a
Or
wagon, a little wagon, a little one-horse shave
Yeah.
type thing. Yeah, we'd been all over town. That was a big thing. And then Banner Grocery and Hardware had groceries and hardware, furniture, and undertaking.
As I said, you know.
Yeah, you know, my grandfather was a mortician.
Yeah.
And another store was Buck Rafter at that store on the north side of the square. And they had the same cost mark as the Banner Grocery and Hardware. This is back before barcodes and computers and this type of thing. So you'd have a cost mark. You'd code what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be.
I had one, Hernosum.
The cost mark for the Banner Grocery Hardware was Garden Spot, GARDENSPOT, and Buck Rattler had the same one. I could go over there and bargain with him. He'd get some mad at me because I knew what he paid for everything.
I worked for the Southern Mercantile. They were, Fred Grove's Walmart at that time. They were kind of like the Banner. They had groceries and feed and,
Worked about 30 people.
yeah, hay and dry goods and shoes and all kinds of hardware and groceries. And their cost code was North Wild.
You remember all that too.
And Charlie Wolf is the old straight, Quickly Ash.
What's what?
Quickly Ash.
The old Southern had 3 of those stations where they took money and made change, and they'd shoot it up there on a little, yeah.
Up there, it's Lawrence and all.
Airborne field there then?
That's where she started.
I remember I was working out there one summer in the feed department, and Carl Nations was in charge of the feed department. And man, alive, I didn't weigh but about 115 pounds. We were rationing those 100-pound sacks of feed. And Carl decided he was gonna quit, and he quit and left me handling all the feed. Well, I put up with it for about 3 weeks. I finally got up my nerve and I said, I'm gonna go up and see Florence, see if I can't get a little raise. Well, she was up there in that balcony, it's about 25 steps going up there. That was the longest 25 steps I ever made in my life.
And you didn't get a raise either?
Yeah, I got up there and I said, Florence, I just feel like that I need a little raise. I'm doing my work and Carl Nason's work too. And she said, I believe you do too. And I think she gave me about a $3 a week raise.
That was
You
good back
worked,
then.
you had another grocery store job before that,
Yeah,
Mr. Keller?
Yeah.
Dad?
Billy Killer. My dad and Billy Blackie had this little grocery store down there. It just wasn't as big as this room. And they bought cream and they bought
Eggs.
chickens and eggs. And I worked down there for 50 cents a day for a long, long time.
What about the produce, the creamery and the,
We had RCV.
yeah,
and,
RC that was there by
and,
the shop where the
Mr.
antique shop is.
McCoy Produce also.
J.B. Jeffrey was his
Yeah.
right-hand man.
He bought the cream.
I remember one time, I remember Glenn Fitter telling about J.B. down there at that old creamery, and they had an old cat. The cat's always hung around the creamery. But anyway, she had about 5 or 6 kittens, and it was J.B.'s job to get rid of those kittens. But Glenn was working down there too, and he said they went out there and picked those kittens up and threw them against the wall and killed them. It was the worst thing he ever did his whole life.
Sorry, ever since, probably.
Yeah, I remember RCV and McCoy.
Well,
Yeah.
Bob McCoy also bought cream down there.
He bought trade and he also bought,
Strawberry and season.
Strawberries,
during the Depression, he bought rabbits.
I had to tell you all a story about Miss Pearl McCoy. Miss Pearl was Bob McCoy's wife. And she was one of these nasty, nice people, you know. We had a couple out west town named Kirkland. Lucy and Lucy's husband named Dave.
Dave Willis.
Dave and Lucy Kirkland. And they'd have a baby about once every 6 months, about every 10 months. And one day Miss Pearl McCoy met Lucy on the street down Prairie Road. She had her nose piece and baby. And Miss Pearl was admiring that baby so much. She says, Lucy, would you give me that baby? Lucy says, no, not alone you, Dave.
There used to be a nightclub out at Park Square, you know, that's where they lived out there. And, Susan, that's not the Mountain Township parks, that's the Boonesboro parks that live 3 miles north of Boonesboro, or Cane Hill, back in those days. Very, very prominent family there. I think one of those was ones that shot one of the kids. You know.
Oh,
Yeah. This happened a long time ago. Anyhow, used to be quite a nightclub out there. Billy Brooks was telling me about what they did out there. They go out there and party a little bit. And
Had a baseball diamond too.
yeah, and to play a little practical joke on someone, they got on that old Model T, they'd go out and jack up one wheel, you know, back wheel, and block it up, so they'd come out and they couldn't go anywhere.
it's called Parks' Corner.
Parks Corner, yeah.
Buddy, it saved your life.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
Well, do you all remember when the Trades Day Association was formed?
The what?
Trade
Trades Day Association.
That went on for years,
yeah.
years and years.
If I could always remember it, but I just wondered,
Gave away $100 every 2 weeks.
And they hired the night watchman. As I recall, we had
That was about George Whistle's only income. That made a consequence. was that Trace Day paper, you read there was two.
Yeah, they had it weekly.
Well, the merchants that were part of the association, did they buy their tickets from the association and then they gave them away?
Right.
One ticket for, was it $1?
I think it was.
Purchase or services or something. And then, it was just a drawing. They saved your Trace Day tickets and you came to town on Trace Day. Saturday, like every 2 weeks, every Saturday was Trace Day or
Okay,
twice
so-
a month. And, put your tickets in the big barrel and oh, the town was always full. They couldn't, and at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, they had the drawing up in the Mock Park. They give away a 50 and a 25 and, cause someone was always tickled to death if they just got one of the fives and it broken down into 50, 25 and on down, 10 and
What year was this?
Susan, talking about my early memories of Prairie Grove and what I live across from the cemetery on the south side of the road there. And then going up was Ed Rich's house, and then the old stone house, and then the Camel Brothers service station, and we had some people used to homestead out in Colorado, and they'd come back, and my dad and the Camel boys would talk them into letting the air out of the tires. That mountain air rotted the tires, so we had to let the air out and fill them back up with Arkansas. And the next was McCoy Produce on the corner with the town pump there. Then across the street, next to the Cumberland Presbyterian Church was Mrs. Collier lived there, and then
Russell Collier's mother.
But,
There was 2 or 3 houses there.
yeah, there was another house, I can't remember, anyhow, and then the Marble Works, Mr. Dorman,
Mr. Dorman,
and then who had that cafe?
Virgil Mayberry.
Virgil Mayberry and Uncle Frank Carl's,
Frank.
where the
Well, Ms. Webb, didn't she have the paper along there too? Just west of Virgil?
No, that was,
Roy-
That's Roy Nixon.
On Mock
Roy
Street.
Nixon ran it.
Yeah.
On Mock Street.
No, it wasn't. It
No, it was on Main Street.
Main Street.
it was.
Buchanan.
Mickey made it, cost more with it.
That's right.
Was there a part where Mike Federer's building is part of that?
Where's the Mayberry at?
Wasn't the phone company there someplace?
It's
Yeah.
upstairs.
Upstairs.
Virgil Mayberry was below the downstairs, had a bakery and didn't he have a
But
bakery?
Railroad Telephone Company's in there too, Calvin.
Well, they were
They
upstairs.
were upstairs. There was a stairway, and then
Virgil Mayberry's place was down below.
my dad and my Uncle Bart and Carl had a general merchandise store there on the corner, on east of that.
Before that, your grandfather and Frank Carl.
Right, yeah.
And all the
And you talk-
wires came out of the window on the
Yeah.
telephone company.
And you talked about your dad a while ago. I remember Oscar Lane used to charm warts off people.
Yeah.
Took one off
You
the
can do
knee.
that in the drugstore.
People come from
Miles.
far and near to get Oscar Bain to charm the warts off. And he charmed one off my thumb one time that was half as big as my thumb. And I never knew where it went. I woke up one morning, it was gone.
He used to
You
do
wanna
that
give a
in the
testimony?
drugstore. He
Oh,
did that in
I
the
had one
drugstore.
off me. Sure, Calvin. I had one on my finger.
Dr. Riddell used to
No,
put
it
in
has
patients, and I'd have patients coming up to my dental office when I first went into practice wanting warts removed.
But you didn't inherit that talent?
No, you had to be the seventh son of a seventh son.
Or was that wrong?
That's what I was told.
Well, that makes a good story.
My dad always tell it,
You
you
were
know,
five brothers short, weren't you?
yeah. And Staggs Company, he'd tell about his most memorable wart case, a female.
But that's fun.
Pardon?
That was fun, wasn't it? I bet you wish you had some more cases like that.
Yeah, it took a lot of rubbing, you remember to get the, I've seen him do it.
Yeah, just rub it around.
Rub that boy. Talk to him.
He disappeared. I remember a
Took a
few
lot
times
of
someone
time.
would catch him in the
Yeah, I
turn
think
drugstore.
Yeah.
And he just put their hand out on that glass tobacco case.
Do you two fellows remember, what year Carmen's opened their drugstore?
35.
35. On the float is 35 or 6.
That was a good year, wasn't it, Charlie?
Yes, it was.
Charlie Wilson nearly had a running kid when he had one competition.
Now Dr. Mock did too.
He'd go out the front door and point which one to go to. I've heard that.
Not across the street, right over there.
Yeah.
Doc Baggett was open.
He said, "Everybody be Carmen's."
Jeff would give him the ticket, but Dr. Mark would point, tell him where to go.
But Dr. Mock always called his prescriptions in.
Yeah.
He never put out. He couldn't see it.
And that was very,
Wish you'd lived in this wonderful little town.
Well, the first thing that I remember, when Cal and I were first married in 1952, Yvonne and Gordon Phillips came back from Virginia or wherever they lived, and Ronald and Melody Regal had moved in the apartment across from us at Sharp Apartments. And there was this wonderful party out at the Oaks, and Miss Madge Maupin gave the party, as I recall. Wasn't it Madge Maupin?
Right.
Anyway, it was done beautifully. And we met a lot of people that we would know better later, and it was a lovely happening.
So you do it with a good
It
team.
was, you bet, you bet.
Y'all know a lot of the history about the Oaks?
not too much.
I have the
Madge Maupin
Maupin.
was big in the Daughters of the Confederacy, I know.
Well, and then Carol Baggett, football moved out there. When did they buy it? You remember, Frank?
No,
It's been a long time.
it's been a long, long time.
But anyway, they lived out there for a while.
And she was part-time too.
Stripping. I would think that Mary or Roberta Cummings could give you some history on that. On the old,
Yeah.
I know it
Lake
was
Maupin
etched on
was,
the front glass.
Was Miss Madge's husband, and he was brother to cousin Bess Cummings. So
Link Maupin,
Madge Maupin,
yeah,
she was married to Lincoln Maupin,
yeah.
and Lincoln was a cousin, or brother of Mrs. Deborah Cummings.
Oh,
That's
okay.
And that's where Maupin Cummings was named for his uncle.
Yeah.
Maupin's dad used
Douglas.
to ride that stallion, you know, really big guy, and he'd ride that.
He said he tipped his hat there in Pensacola.
Down in
First.
Tennessee.
The half line.
Yeah.
One time, Jack and Kitty Sue heard this before them. Douglas was quite a wit. And one time he loaned a double shovel plow to a friend down there, right by a neighbor. And the man just kept it and kept it. Finally one day, Douglas met him on the lane down there and says, "You still got my double shovel plow?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I sure have, Douglas. I didn't mean to bring it back." He said, "Well, I really wish you would. I've had a chance to loan to another fellow for a year."
Can y'all talk about going to school, where it was, and maybe what y'all did? I don't know if I want to hear some of Jack's stories.
Well, I was in the third grade before I ever moved to Prairie Level. But,
You soon caught up, didn't you?
I think I got up pretty quick.
Remember?
My third grade teacher was Mary Dean
Really?
Magruder. You were in the same grade, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And then I forgot who our fourth grade teacher was, but Miss Emma Cook was our fifth and sixth grade teacher.
Forever and ever.
Back Baggett was our,
Cody and I had her
Wait,
too.
Maxine Baggett was her fifth grade teacher.
yeah, okay, I remember that.
And I can remember room over on the west side of the school building, and
Who was your third grade teacher?
Mary Dean Magruder.
And mine was Molly Rollins.
But I can remember Maxine Baggett was going with James Bay Parks at the time. James Bay lived on up the hill there, and he'd walk down about 9 o'clock every morning, and Maxine could not stay away from the window, waiting to see James Bay come in. She would get all about her school class, wait for James Bay to come, and he'd always stop and they'd have a little visit, and then she was always in a good humor after that.
I started first grade in a wooden building.
I did too, yeah. This is Dar.
Molly Dar.
Dar, D-A-R-R.
What grade were you in the new one?
Second grade.
I started there and I was in the fourth. A year and over.
Well, I was in the sixth grade, and Miss Emma Cook was my teacher. And I could truthfully say she had more influence on my daily life than any teacher I ever had. She taught us some really, really strict Christian principles, and I never forgot them. I didn't always adhere to them, but she sure made an impression on me.
She taught the whole elementary school because she was principal of, I guess she was.
For years, she was principal of that school.
She had chapel every Friday morning.
Yeah.
And it was a better sermon than you got lots of times. And we had to sing Onward Christian Soldiers as we marched in the chapel.
I remember one time she heard me call Ronald Riggle Fatty. And she called me in there at school, and if she didn't read the right act to me, I never called anybody Fatty again.
Oh, you did too, you called me that.
I called you little chubby Bud. Bud and I only had 9 months difference in our ages. I was always skinny as a rail, about half starved. Buddy was a nice, fat, plump little boy, you know. And
13 pounds.
people would look at us and say, look at him, and there was only 9 months difference in their ages.
Talk about teachers, I believe Ms. Mamie had the biggest impression on me.
Oh, she did me too.
Yeah.
I've forgotten, was it her left or right eyebrow that she raised it up?
I don't know, but she could see out the
Pin
back.
drop.
Well, you know, I had Mamie, she was outstanding. And so was Mary Temple Anderson.
Yeah.
She tried hard.
She sure was. She was.
Mary Temple had a bad habit. She sit the desk and spread her legs out like that. Old black panties clear down to her knees.
I thought you were talking about her
You remember Mr. Fowler?
That come up pretty good, ain't it?
Mr. Fowler kicked us out of school one day and we all played hooky. Go after the Christmas tree. And the next morning, he was sitting on the steps waiting for us to come in. And he told us we could not get back into school unless we had an excuse from our parents. So I patted down the shoe shop, see my dad, and told him I had to have an excuse to get back into school. You want to know why I had to have an excuse? I said, well, I was absent yesterday. He said, I can't give you an excuse for that. I thought, well, Dad, if you want me to go back to school, you better give me something. So he said, I'll give you something, but it won't be an excuse. And I have never forgotten the note that he wrote to Mr. Fowler. He said, Mr. Fowler, I did not know that Buddy was absent yesterday. Deal with him as you see fit and proper. And I wondered how many parents today would give it kind of support to teachers.
Not many.
Yeah.
What was fit and proper in your case?
What
was fit and proper in your case?
I think I got lucky. As I recall.
My dad and Donald, I guess they're older than y'all.
about 3 years older than I am.
Because when they would talk about school, it would be, I don't know how they made it through, because they were ornery. They would talk about rigging up a bell. And some guy, I don't know which teacher it was, but they had rigged up this bell. And whenever he would turn his back, they would ring it. And it drove him crazy.
Frank Moppin was a teacher.
Oh.
My brother, I went to school, my brother was teaching.
Yeah,
I took a math course under him.
Yeah, I remember.
Taught
John
John.
Short,
You taught me physics.
I did 1 year at the university. But he was a pretty good mathematician.
Yeah.
He sure was.
Jack, you and William said a few tacks for the teachers. I remember.
Had a few things like that I remember. I really did.
I remember, back during the Depression, you probably noticed all the ditches that are have the rock walls here, that was all done by WPA. And, yes, and, we had the CCC camp down at Devil's Den. WPA really turned this whole country, I think, more democratic in politics than, much more so than they were during the Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
Because this was their livelihood. This is how they got along. And they got $1 a day. And my dad, the grocery business caused them to go bankrupt because they would not refuse groceries to people that couldn't pay for them. So Banner Grocery and Hardware ceased to exist, and my dad worked at WPA for $1 a day. And I think that's why everybody, FDR was the big shining hero here. And when I brought my bride to be to Prairie Grove the first time to meet my folks, my dad came out. Welcome to Prairie Grove, Arkansas, the city of 1,000 happy people and one Republican.
You can still see the good works that those people did.
Sure can. Lake Winning was another place that they built that.
The cabins out there, there's still a lot of them there.
They did it.
After I moved to Oak Mulligan one time, I was over here and I had a friend with me. I don't know what we were doing, but anyway, we had some reason to come over here. Before we left town, I said, there's somebody I'd like you to meet, Lawrence Hill. Lawrence was manager of the Southern Mercantile at that time. So we walked over those long stairs up to the crow's nest she had up there, where her office was. We sat around the desk at the lodge. Pretty soon I said, well, Lawrence, we gotta go. She said, well, how's Glenn getting along? I said, well, he's doing fine. She turned to this friend of mine and said, those figures always were about half Republican.
That's the way it was.
Well,
You
I can
remember
remember
when?
our mother talking about, as a child, she didn't know what the difference in Democrats and Republicans were. All she knew, and she named a couple of people, I can't remember the names, but she said, we expected every time we saw them to see horns growing out of their heads. All we knew about them was that they slipped off up the head when we ran a parade on 4th of July. They did a
Probably
parade
brought
on
that.
And that was always so funny that as kids they would look every time they took their heads off, said there's horns growing out. The stories they had heard from their parents like this about Republicans and Democrats.
Who remembers Mr. Perry Harrison?
Yeah.
You know,
That's a good president.
he couldn't preach a sermon without breaking down crying. And my grandmother said one time that the problem Brother Perry had was that his bladder was built too close to his eyeballs.
Was that Gertrude's dad?
No.
No.
Yes, it was. It was. What was his son's name, Francis?
Huh?
What was his son's name, the boy?
Gertrude's brother.
Gertrude's brother,
Uh,
Cox. What was, his name was Cox, wasn't it? It wasn't Pearson.
What was his name?
Was it initials?
I didn't
I
know.
can't remember.
During the Depression, Miss Lena Helm, I talked to her one time about the Depression, and she said that she would remember the hobos, she called them hobos, coming off the train, and they'd always go to the back door and ask for work. Y'all remember?
I don't remember them coming to our house.
Not only hobos, but,
But the gypsies used to
Camps over
have,
on the railroad track.
the gypsy used to, Florence Hills folks had that, all kinds of fruit, strawberries, blackberries, everything out on the mountain.
Weavers.
And, weavers, yes, and, the gypsies used to come through here, the Indians,
Indians were
a lot of
transported in.
Indians would camp out there, and then the gypsy would come through with his little wagons, and my mom would grab him and hide me in the closet. So we went by,
well, she also bought some things so they wouldn't steal.
yes.
And that was her theory, that if she bought something, they wouldn't steal. And I still have a tapestry, that I've kept that she bought from the gypsy.
Remember Herschel Clark? Herschel Clark from York?
I can remember when the gypsies used to come to town though, and everybody would know when they were here. And my dad was standing at the front door of his store and let them in one at a time. He wouldn't let more than one because he couldn't watch them. They'd just steal everything they could get their hands on.
Mm-hmm.
How did they travel in a group and in cars?
In little wagons.
Wag, donkeys and wagons.
Yeah. With a caravan?
Talking
But
about
they
the
kind of
Depression.
spread out.
During the Depressions, when we got our waterworks,
It sure was.
the Fairgrove Enterprise down at the waterworks office, it said, shows where Fairgrove got a grant for $35,000 put in the waterworks. 1936. And in 1937, we got a grant for 65 or something like 60 something for the sewer. That wouldn't put in a block today.
Well, someone needs to tell the story, some of you that experienced it or knew about it, when Julia Zelman Thompson had Franklin. Anyway, that night, well, they called the doctor, and the doctor came, and he went down to turn on the electricity. Mac did. And he turned on the electricity, and of course, it was in the wee hours,
About 2 o'clock in
and
the
the
morning.
lights came on all over town because they turned them off at night. And everybody got up and couldn't figure out why the bread hadn't risen, and the
Cow wouldn't give any
cow
milk.
wouldn't give milk. But anyway, he turned on the lights so they could deliver Franklin Thompson.
Michael Thompson was an engineering graduate, University of
was.
Arkansas, and he did some great work around here.
Oh, and when their kids went over to the university and looked at the wall, they said, "My goodness, you know that Dad was only 8 years old when he graduated from the university."
Julia, she liked to, just to exaggerate the truth a little bit.
Julia?
One time, Frank and I were back home from Christmas vacation, Christmas holiday, and he was going to Columbia University, and I was going to the University of Virginia. And we were trained back east together after the holidays. And we got to St. Louis, and we each had our suitcases stolen.
Oh,
And Julie was telling some of her friends here in Prairie Grove about it, and said that Franklin lost $100 in neckties alone. What I had, none the 15 cents really. $100 in neckties.
Julia Thompson's we used to go over there, and her mother didn't, we'd go over there on Sunday to play bridge, and we'd have to sneak upstairs because
You go up the back stairway.
yeah, no card playing on Sunday. And
Herman and Betty didn't like that, huh?
no, no.
No, because she was receiving people from the Methodist church in the afternoon, and we'd be upstairs playing bridge and trying to be quiet. And I think she had a,
Get a saucer about today.
Well, I can remember Susan's great grandmother, Miss McCormick, hated cards like Satan hates holy water. And we'd sit on that front porch up there at your house in the summertime and play Monopoly, and once in a while we'd sit a deck of cards in, and Miss McCormick come out there and say, "You playing those spotted devils?"
During World War II, y'all remember, like, living here in Fair Grove and rationing? Talk a little bit about that.
I remember as a 7 and 8-year-old girl, there were no men in town. All my cousins and my brother and everybody that age was gone.
This is our ranking officer, Miss Captain Helen here. We want to say a few words.
I can remember in World War II, Prairie Grove had a short 1,000 people in it, and at one time there were 13 boys from Prairie Grove going through an aviation cadet program at San Antonio, Texas at the same time.
Joe Marks and I, we missed out on that. We flunked the mental examination. Joe and I, we had great ambitions to be pilots. We went to Little Rock, Texas, but we take the mental examination, and we both flunked it.
now why?
You all always work kind of backwards.
I
I
remember
can
my,
remember Pearl Harbor very vaguely. I think I was home sick. The only excuse she got to not go to church on Sunday. I think I had a chicken pox. And I don't remember exactly when I began to hear my parents and whoever was there talk about it, but I just remember the atmosphere that day. It was like everyone in the family had died or something. It was, you know, a feeling of doom, and it seemed to hang over in it. As I said, as a young child, it really, I think, influenced me a lot. Seeing the young men gone and the rationing and the way the whole country and our little Prairie Grove had. We had pie suppers, and I was so proud of my dad the night that he bought a pie for a $25 bond for me, which was $18.75, and that was a lot of money for my dad to spend. And how proud I was of that bond, and I kept it.
Edward Nations was killed.
Who was that?
Edward Nations.
I've got a Christmas card from him. He'd mailed 2 days before.
But he and Bert Geiger both volunteered for the Marines just shortly before Pearl Harbor.
And Richard King.
Abbott didn't pass. The Marines, he went in the Army later.
I remember in elementary school, I must have been very, very young. But anyway, we used to spend our study time peeling the lead foil off cigarette packages for the war effort to make bullets for World War II.
Really?
Probably all of you did.
I'm sure we couldn't get chewing gum anymore because,
Pardon?
and we couldn't get chewing gum, I think.
Couldn't get Hershey bars.
You know, you couldn't get candy, and the word would get out when there was going to be bubble gum in one of the grocery stores. And I think by that time, Clyde Rutherford had the little store south of Main Street there. And so the kids that walked to school from that side of town would stop and they would find out if there was gum there. But usually by the time the word got back to school and the day went by and I begged mother or tried to beg a dime or a nickel or penny or anything, bubble gum was usually gone. But that was
The main thing I remember about going to school, you walked or rode a horse.
We didn't have any snow days either, did we?
No, no snow days. I cannot remember
I don't either.
anybody having a car, can you? In high school?
I don't remember.
Gordon Phelps.
Gordon Phelps, one.
Didn't Ronald Regal?
No.
He didn't?
Well, now, Ronald and I went to high school and his dad offered to send us to University High School our junior year. He did buy him a car at that time, but not to Prairie Grove School.
Okay.
I remember Earl Cates lived 3 or 4 miles out in the country. And I don't know if it's his car or maybe his family's car, but I was in high school about maybe 10th grade. I fell down the steps, a big old long 5 steps when I started high school. I fell down and broke my arm, and I remember he picked me up and put me in his car and carried me down, and Jeff Baggett set my arm and charged me. I paid $5.
I remember when Polly jumped out of the window up there, and I didn't hurt him. Polly was the dog that rode on the finger of the delivery wagon from the hometown grocer.
My dad and Leroy went to Springdale to a livestock sale. And they got out, and there was Polly. And they must talk kind of rough to him. I don't know how many hours they was gone, 2 or 3 hours. They got home, he was back home, and he didn't go with them. He hitched a ride somewhere.
That is a dog you're talking
Well,
about?
yeah, dog with a
We have a
curl
picture of him in our
tail.
We got a oil painting of it.
Jim Cabot was the sheriff here, and he had a big old English bulldog called Chub. And Chub came to school every day and spent the whole day. And then when school was out, he'd go home, and all the kids would go home. Next morning, Chub would be right there. I don't know how long this went on, but
Well, it used to be big. We had the top dog in town.
yeah, Bingo,
Short as Clark.
Bingo and Fred Skelton's dog.
Yeah.
Duke.
Well, they had reputations here.
Bingo and Conjo.
But they were kind of loved Florida and Jim Cabot. Every time they saw each other, they'd fight.
I used to watch out the window after I wouldn't practice. They were out there. Try to look dumb in the eyeball.
You and Glenn and John Henry spent a lot of your time driving your car on the sidewalk, didn't you?
I remember we did. Lynn Fiddler and John Henry Brewster and I bought a Model T Ford. We paid $25 for it from, well, he lived down in south part of town anyway. We didn't, any of us tell our folks that we bought this car. We was about 14, 15 years old. And I'd take it home one night. I'd say, well, this is Glenn's car. He let me take it home. Then take it home the next night, and he'd tell Roy and Louise, well, this is Jack's car. He let me take it home tonight. We kept that old car for a year, I guess, and our folks never did know this long.
Tell a story on Jack. The day before, well, Sunday before he was leaving for the Army. And I guess Buddy was already gone, and I don't know about Glenn, but I just remember John Henry was in on it. I think Jack had a girlfriend at Cane Hill he wanted to go say goodbye to. And his cousins were visiting here from Tennessee, Billy Jimmy. And I think that he had used me and his cousin as an excuse to get to go see the girlfriend because he and John Henry were going to take us for a ride in that Model T. So we took off to Cane Hill, and I thought that was the most wonderful ride. The old car wouldn't go up those little hills forward. They had to turn around. And so here we were, just wheeling in the dirt and the dust, and it was in the hot summertime, and every time they'd come to a little incline and have to put it in reverse and back up. But it was worth it because when we got back to town, they
Was
took
that
us to the
impressive?
Sturry drugstore and bought us a cherry line. And it wasn't a nickel one, it was a diamond.
Must have been big.
That was a big
That was kind of a red letter day for you.
That was a red letter to me. I got to say it with my older cousins. I got
And that old motel impressed Grace Pine.
Did what?
It impressed Grace Pine.
Grace Pine.
I didn't remember who we went to see,
Up
but
on top of the hill.
to tell her goodbye.
2 or 3 years ago, Alice and I were gone somewhere, and Grace Pike and her husband came through Okmulgee and stopped and visited with Glenn and Helen. And that's the last time and the first time since I was in high school I even knew where she was or what she was doing or anything. But she was a long-time girlfriend of mine. I remember the high school paper we had, the Tiger Tales, you remember? Somebody wrote in the Tiger Tales one time, said, Jack Harlan doesn't want to, what? He just wants to set a fire in Grace Pye's heart. Well, that's about the nicest thing anybody ever said about me. Jack Harlan didn't want to set the world afire, he just wanted to start a flame in Grace Pye's heart.
I hope that impressed her.
Well, I'm sure it did. I'm sure she was impressed with me anyway.
Of course.
This is the couple that came from California, Lincoln,
Mhm.
California.
No, what I want to know, Helen, is if she was this close to Jack, why didn't she come see Jack at the same time?
Well, I was gone.
He was
I said I
out of town,
You were?
We were out of town when she came through.
Okay then.
so good excuse.
She may have wanted to see Glenn too. She may have had a.
She was very nice looking.
She's very, very attractive.
Mhm.
She sure was.
She had an uncle who was a deaf mute. What was it, Zeb?
Zeb, I remember Zeb, little guy.
Zeb Edmondson. I know I'd go over there to Fort Grace and we'd go up in her living room and we'd always have to run Zeb out. So
That neighbor's up on the cross
living
and
room by
Railroad.
herself.
Arnold?
He couldn't.
Arnold Cross?
Here.
You can see.
Buddy has a story here about an uncle of ours,
Cousin.
cousin, I'm
He
sorry.
worked for Herbert Carl. Excuse me, Herbert Carl. He died down at Benton, Arkansas. You know what Benton, Arkansas was then? That was the last place where these flames were sent. But Herbert he could stand there and watch the freight trains go by. And in his head, add all the serial numbers of the freight cars. It was the most remarkable thing you ever saw. But he was epileptic, and he was not mentally balanced, but he had this fantastic or unusual mathematical ability. And he could read and add the 4 and 5 digit numbers on the cars on the freight car.
And totaled them as the train.
The train went by.
And he knew every license plate number
Right.
in Prairie Grove, Arkansas.
But how did you know he was right with these numbers? Who checked him out?
Somebody checked him out, and had recorded it, and they had it up
Okay.
themselves. But the fact that he knew everybody's license number would tell you something about it.
I remember one time we crawled up on the water tower or something. I don't remember the details.
That used to be
Oh, yeah.
every summer evening pastime to go down there and gather around that water tower and climb up the top of it.
Not me.
105 feet, as I recall.
You didn't pass your evening.
Well, I know that every time there was anything going on in Prairie Grove from the 1952 from then on, that Miss Joy Webb almost always knew about it.
It was in the
It
paper.
was in the
And she
paper.
called to ask what was served, who had the party, and it was always ice cream and cake. And so anyway, we all had a pie. No matter what she said, it was ice cream and cake.
Tony and I had Miss Joy Webb in Sunday school.
Oh.
We went for Miss Joy Webb to Peggy Park. And we had a wonderful time.
Before
giant
Well, we had Ethel Steele and old maid.
But Ethel was good. She would spend her Sunday
Yeah.
afternoon taking us on walks, and she was the best.
She was good to us, Miss Webb, but say, I know what y'all are gonna do this afternoon. You're going down there to that awful old movie. And we were.
Well, Dr. Webb was quite a checker player, you know. He spent most of his time out of the office across the street from Moff Park down there. He and Eddie Kelly and Bill Quick. Yeah. Anyhow, it's had a lot of checking games back in those days.
The end of the office up on the east end of Main Street. And the local boys, I'm up older than I was, used to sit around and watch them eat those post dogs every morning. They'd make bets on exactly where between his office and the post office, and he'd scratch himself.
That's what he was talking about.
Happened every time.
I wasn't gonna tell that.
Everybody in Old Mosby knows that story. The one John just told.
Oh, okay.
Tell them about the restaurant, Carney's, was it, honey, that had all that pie? They, what did she say every time you come in?
One time,
Fed your pie?
Sunday.
You don't remember?
Oh,
Did you hear
what-
me?
Yeah, I'm listening to you. I'm trying to think.
Apple, something?
Yeah, we've got three kinds of pie. Open top, stripped, and kivered, all apple.
one time, we had a restaurant operated by Conley and Lyde Hilton. And Conley was the front man, Lyde was in the back of the kitchen. And people come in and order a hamburger. And Conley would call back to Lyde, hamburger pulled. He called her pulled. Who for Conley? She'd tell him, hamburger pulled. Who for Conley? He'd tell her, just go on and on. So one day Conley was not in a very good humor. Somebody came in and wanted a hamburger. He said, hamburger pulled. Who for Conley? None of your damn business.
Well, Lyde Hilton was mine and Tody's third and fourth grade teacher.
Where
And
did they
she
have
was
it, Brett?
wonderful.
Where did they have it today?
I
I don't remember that.
When the Blue Moon,
no,
the
I was a
Bowls I had.
Yeah, that was my uncle.
Really,
over there about where, I think
Where Hannah used to be?
Carl Hannah,
I remember Carl Hannah had it.
or Carl.
I remember my grandmother talking about when they finally repealed prohibition, and Carl Hannah put the first beer joint in town. And mine and Katie Susan, Buddy's grandfather, would walk back and forth to work over at the mill every day. And one evening he came in, he was a little bit late getting home, and my grandmother asked him where he'd been, and said, well, he stopped down at Carl Hannah's and had to try out a beer. Said, it cost a quarter. I don't guess I'll do that anymore.
What was the little cafe you were talking about, Virgil, someone that had a little,
Virgil Mayberry.
is that the one that Mother and I used to talk about? He made the best chili.
oh yeah,
And
I've
that
been
they
there for
would
chili.
go down and take a little tin bucket, and for a dime, they got that little bucket full of chili and all the crackers that they could area in their hand. And I thought that was the greatest thing they ever wrote.
Good pies.
I guess his name was Virgin, they all called him Virgin Mayberry, I don't know why, but. Remember that?
Can I help you, Cody?
You wanna get up? I've gotta get up or I'll never get up. I'll be there all night.
He lived up there right north of Andy's office, didn't he?
Yeah, sure did. First house there on that block.
I think so.
I know Buddy, I've heard him talk about this before, but the businesses that like your grandfather and then all the brothers were in.
Five brothers, and they were all in Venice at one time. Here in Prairie Grove, but a different business. All five brothers, Carl brothers.
Tell them what they were.
I'm not sure I can remember.
And I heard the
Frank
furniture.
and Clint had a store there in the corner. Uncle John had the banner. Uncle Van had, was he what, Uncle Van and Uncle Walter had a bed. I forgot that. Walter and Van had a nice store.
Oh, I'm all right, thanks.
Sitting on the ground.
But very unusual, Andrew, a small town like this to have five brothers in business, five different businesses.
All of them in the retail business.
I think all of our family started out farming, all farmers, and then probably when the male children grew up and left the farm, well, they went into the retail business. They couldn't
And
handle it all.
our great-grandfather made the California Gold Rush.
Yeah.
And when he came back from California, he came up to Guatemala and then back into Prairie Grove. He's the one that was married to Karen's, not Karen, but
Susan.
Susan's great-grandmother,
Sophia.
Sophia Parks.
Mountain Township. He came here about 1837 or something like that.
Okay.
John P.A. Parks, you heard about him, Sue? You know anything about him?
Had a lot of kids. I mean,
He what?
he had a lot of kids.
Well, he was said to be a very brilliant man. He was a member of the Arkansas legislature, and he voted for secession. But he was thought to be a very brilliant man. He was your great-grandfather.
I have a paper where a copy of a bill or a listing he wrote out. This is immediately after the Civil War. This is what the government took away from me. And he listed 10 slaves and the value of each slave and total death, and it was about $10,000. That was a lot of money.
Where'd you find that, Charlie?
You remember, not really, Carl,
Yeah.
Lily's granddaughter has worked about 30 years. Her name is Clark. That's Carly Bridenthal's daughter.
I remember Carly Bridenthal's.
It's his daughter. She's worked about 30 years, and I have a copy. She shared everything with me. I've got, I think the Parks family is traced back to the 1600s. Everything that she had, she's copied and sent to me, including a lot of pictures. The Carl family, the Hannah family, the Parks family, and the Bank family. A lot of information. She is a source of information, and so sharing, so willing to share everything. And I had distant relative, two distant relatives in California. They had shared materials with me. And when Joe and I wound up with all our old family pictures, all the pictures that I could identify anybody in, I scanned and burned them to a CD. I have about 160 or 70 pictures in a CD up there.
Speaking of brother-in-laws, Tom Brunfield passed on, or
No, he's still in.
can you tell us something?
No, he's in
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, Nevada.
Before his mother died, she moved out there and was in a care center. And I believe that Tom Brunfield's children took care of her.
Jack Brumfield died during the war.
Yeah.
Did he? I wondered about that.
He got shot down. He was a pilot.
He was a
shot
Flying
down over
Tigers,
there.
wasn't he? Wasn't he flying with Flying Tigers?
Yeah. B-51?
What year was, they was here,
B-40?
I think.
Yeah.
they were here and went to school a year or two, right?
I don't remember that, but I remember
I
going.
remember being here.
They had, Brunfields had the Mountain Inn Hotel there in Federal, and I remember going over there when I was just a small child, playing in the lobby over there with them.
Was that, didn't they go to school?
You're
I
still
don't
there,
think so.
Bobby Carl.
I don't think so.
Bob Carl, I'm in contact with him regularly. He's in, he was an engineer with one of the space programs, wasn't he?
What about Catherine? Where is she?
She's in the
Catherine's
same
in
place.
Yakima. They're both in Yakima. We email him. He's quite a,
They've been here to visit a couple of times.
Pardon?
They've been here to visit one time.
Really?
yes, they came to see me about 4 years ago, I guess, both of them. A funny thing, Joe and I, we were playing dip with the bridge at Ridden Hall in Bella Vista 5 or 6 years ago, something.
Longer, maybe.
Maybe 7 years ago. Anyhow, this, go from table to table, and we went to this one table, and there was a couple we didn't recognize, and some new people, and we introduced ourselves, and I asked him, where are you from? He's from California. I said, no. He said, where are you from? I said, I'm from a town in Arkansas. You've never heard of it. And he says, where's that? I said, Prairie Grove, Arkansas. He said, I work with an engineer in the space program out there from Prairie Grove, Arkansas. I said, yeah? Who was that? Bob Carr. I said, Bob Carr. So following that, we flew out to visit Doug Brown, who used to be our neighbor in Prairie Grove. And Doug insisted that he take us over to Yakima and to visit Bob and Catherine. And we hadn't seen each other, I believe, in 65 years. And we've been in close contact ever since with email regularly, pictures. He loves photography, and he's a ham radio operator, and done a lot of things. Very interesting guy.
Cal told him that since Bob Carl left the Prairie Grove School in the 4th grade, he said, I almost flunked out because I had been looking over your shoulder for years.
Who was superintendent of schools when you were?
Miss Brassfield.
Yeah.
He asked Davidson beforehand.
Mr. Swade.
That's where you.
Davidson was son, I think.
When did they start consolidating some of the smaller schools into Prairie Grove? I know
Right after the war,
when we
wasn't
were
it?
in the, Tony and I were in the 3rd grade, I believe, when Walnut Grove and Bonnie Grove and some of those came in. But I thought maybe there had been others before then.
Before we wrap it up for tonight, could y'all go around and say your names?
I'm Calvin Bain.
I'm Buddy Helm.
I'm Katie Helm Reed.
I'm Jack Harlan.
Francis Baggett.
Paul Jones,
Henry Jones. Joe Bain.
Helen Fiddler. Hal Shaw. Doris Shaw.
Dr. Hall?
Joe Hall.
Something that we probably ought to get on record, it would be Charlie Wilson.
Well, Charlie Wilson was a good friend of my dad. We hung out together some down at the filling station my dad ran. And I have lots of memories of Charlie Wilson. Did our job. I used to live in a cabin right west of here in the Magruder thicket. And I think he was entertained, and he furnished entertainment for a lot of people in town because they would kid him, but still they were his friend, I think. And this went on for years. He used to play his juice harp at times and take it out of his overall pockets, you know. And he dressed up at times, and he was a former slave of the Wilson family, and as his mother, after the war, and they were freed, Civil War, mother taken he and his brother and little sister, she thought she had employment in Van Buren, Arkansas, and they started to leave the plantation, the Upland Plantation, and got a short distance from that plantation, and she knew she couldn't handle the situation, so she told the children to go back to the Wilsons if they'll take care of you, and they did. And after Charlie became ill and almost blind, I guess, the townspeople built a place for him in an outbuilding at my grandfather's place. My mother and father were living there then after my grandparents were deceased. They built a place for him out there, and the townspeople carried him food. The carnies would bring him pies. Everybody took care of him until he died.
Right, he was known all over town as Nigger Charlie.
yeah.
No disrespect to him, that was his name, Nigger Charlie.
I think now his mom sent Charlie and his older brother, I believe, back to the Wilson plantation, and I think the older brother was accused of stealing a horse at one time, and the Wilsons hid this brother Charlie out in a cave. It'd be where the Ledfords live now, and made arrangements. You know, took him food and all. You know, and made arrangements for him to leave this area because you know, he knew what the disposition of you know, the law would have with him if they ever found him. But I think there was a brother that came with Charlie back here.
Charlie was the night watchman down at the livery stable, and there was sort of a town girl that used to give him a lot of trouble. What was his name? I don't. Anyhow, Charlie slept upstairs in the loft. He had a ladder to go up to the loft, and this guy was giving him trouble all the time. Charlie told him, if you come up those steps, I'm going to shoot you. And he did. Shot him with a pistol. Shot him right here. This guy had on a silk necktie, and pulled on the tie, and the bullet came out.
I remember hearing that.
And my dad had that pistol at one time. Charlie died.
When they came back up to stay with the Wilsons, I know that they were educated right with their kids. They were literate, and I think that they took good care of them. And I don't know if it's my father or whoever said that Charlie would only work for the old families in Prairie Grove. That you know, he wouldn't work for any, you know, any of the newcomers.
I used to have a professor at the university, Andrew. Cal talk about the way Griswold took care of Charlie. This professor used to claim the only true love, that existed towards the Negro people exists in the South. But there's always a white man who would take care of a black. And he, I've heard him say that so many times. And of course, there's some who would dispute that today, I guess. But it's generally true that the white master took care of the blacks.
Did Charlie live over here behind the Holmes place? Aunt
Oh,
Jane's?
the Gerda Creek,
Yeah, okay.
north of the home. Yes.
I thought at one time that
I remember going up
he
there.
worked from his home, so.
He had a quail trap set out there by his little cabin. I saw it one time.
Well, I think it might be important to mention that when Fred and Madge McChristian retired, that Fred was still working through the Rockefeller Foundation to support the Southern Negro colleges in the South. And he did a lot of traveling and some work for the Rockefeller Foundation. And
There's a good article in the Gazette-Democrat a few weeks ago, Jim Rayford, copy of it, on his twin brother, Ed. And his job was, he was a PhD also, and his job was Arkansas Educational Association. He promoted education in the blacks because they were spending about $15 a year on the black student, and about 4 times that much on a white student. And when he died in 1968, a year before Fred died, the pallbearers were both black and white, which was unusual.
Fred met the twins with him.
Yes, identical twins.
one time at the Methodist Church, I didn't realize at that time that Fred had a twin brother, and they looked so much alike that I went up and tried to hug this man, and he just backed off from me, and I realized I'd made a faux pas, and it was Fred's twin brother, Ed, and he didn't know me from Adam.
Any other questions?
We all remember Oscar, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Oscar, that was one.
Coretta Wilson Edwards, known as Toby.
And what relative of yours built this house?
My grandfather, and my father was born in this house.
That would be Caswell Wilson.
And what year?
That, 1907.